Welcome to another episode of Beyond Physical, where we talk about the mental, emotional, social, and at times spiritual benefits of exercise. We believe that exercise is more than movement, and this podcast is our attempt at sharing that message with the world by sharing our own as well as our guests' experiences and knowledge. If you enjoy it, we ask that you please spread the message by leaving a rating and review, or even better, by sharing with a friend.
You guys heard it here first. Seb is indeed an NPC. He actually just lags in the same spot.
So anytime there's any sort of dust,
Right.
sorry, I'm buffering.
Man's lagging.
Welcome to Beyond Physical. Today we're going to talk about NA, non-alcoholic beverages, and the growth in that industry. We're going to use that as our kind of starting point, and then touch a little bit on the role of alcohol in health and fitness. It's something that I think as trainers we are well versed in conversing about. It's a question that comes up very, very regularly, for me at least. I know a lot of my clients are sort of lifestyle adjustment type clients. Maybe Gideon, for you it's a little bit different because a lot of your stuff is injury rehabilitation. But for me, definitely, I'm often getting the question, well, Seb, given my goal to achieve X, Y, and Z, how often should I be drinking alcohol? And, you know, it seems like a very straightforward question, but it happens all the time. But anyway, it's something that makes your health and wellness a lot more difficult to manage. I know Mark punished 6 beers on Sunday, aggressively throated 6 of them non-stop to the dome.
Just straight
Unsolicited attack. I'm not shaming beers. I love a beer. I love a lager, Black Label. Shout out. They don't sponsor us. I love a bourbon. But in saying that, I know how horrific it is for my health, to be honest. For a little bit of homework, we each, I hope, listened to that Huberman podcast where he spoke about how toxic alcohol is and how it makes your body severely less efficient metabolically and the like. It just makes you more vulnerable to illness, to injury, and it dulls your senses. It's highly addictive, and it really does nothing for you health-wise, to be honest. It makes you feel quite nice momentarily, but it's obviously accompanied by quite a shitty feeling the next day. I know personally that I have a lot of anxiety, even when I'm not hanging over very badly. I just feel quite anxious. Even if I have one beer, the next day or a couple of days I have like a low level anxiety, and that's why I'm currently in like a bit of like a sobriety block. It's because I drank pretty much every day when I was on holiday, because as I said, I do love a beer, and I just felt terrible. It wasn't even a case of feeling athletically dulled. It was just emotionally. I didn't feel good at all. So I thought to myself, you know, when I get back from holiday, I'm going to chill out on that a bit. But I am going to give the little synopsis on the non-alcoholic beverage industry, and then I'll open it to the team to chat. But Anthony Venare from our favorite Fit Insider posted on LinkedIn the other day that mindful drinking culture is growing. As the movement spreads, brands are showing people sober socializing can be just as cool. The majority of consumers buying non-alcoholic options still drink on occasion, but are increasingly aware that even moderate drinking increases odds of cancer and premature death. With public health officials urging people to quit the bottle, even alcohol giants are building zero-proof portfolios. Moet Hennessy is invested in non-alcoholic sparkling wine label French Bloom. Smirnoff owner Diageo acquired Ritual Zero Proof and Seedlip drinks. Absolute owner Pernod Ricard backed Lewis Hamilton's non-alcoholic tequila Almarv. And an early mover, Athletic Brewing Company, established alcohol-free beer as a booming subsector, accounting for over 80% of the non-alcoholic market share. Meanwhile, wellness clubs like Remedy Place and Othership are building community minus the booze. Still young, the non-alcoholic category accounts for just about 1% of global alcohol sales. That part I didn't really understand so much because they said non-alcoholic booze account for about 1% of global alcohol sales, but I'm assuming that's non-alcoholic. They kind of classing non-alcoholic alternatives in terms of like zero beers and stuff like that in this like under the same category as just all alcohol. So it's still very small, but growth is outpacing conventional, and each generation is drinking less. So, what are your guys' thoughts on non-alcoholic drinking alternatives? What's your relationship like with booze? I don't think either of you drink very much.
I mean, yeah, I I drink on the very occasion, maybe, maybe twice a month, maybe. But then when I say twice a month, it's at a very very low level.
It's balls to the wall binge,
Yeah,
just
I'm
blackout.
just like smashing bottles over oaks' heads when I'm
My
like
goodness.
14 beers deep. No, 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 no. I will have the occasional maybe 1, 2 drinks on a Saturday night kind of thing. But it's interesting you say about my clients being, I actually have a client. I have 2 clients actually that had spoken, and we had spoken about alcohol quite regularly, and it comes up quite a lot because these 2 individuals, would drink quite socially. And they were both in the position where they understood that it wasn't doing them any good for their health. My one client actually found that he would he would actually retain a lot of water after drinking. He would feel very puffy after drinking. Like throughout the week worth of having, 1 glass of wine with supper or 2 glasses. Then by like the Thursday, Friday, when it come to our session, he would just complain about being constantly puffy and like feel sluggish and all of that. So this was about 2 months ago. So we had a conversation about reducing his alcohol consumption in the week and then being mindful over the weekend if he is going to have something, just to reduce it quite significantly. So he did that and noticed a dramatic improvement in his mental health at work, as well as his mental health around his own body, around his training, around everything. So the upsides were quite incredible. And that was kind of a process as of 2 months ago. And now, reflecting on, I think it was last week I spoke to him, he says it's completely changed his life, the new perspective on alcohol and how he interacts with it. And then it came up with all the non-alcoholic alternatives and how they're leaning into that more. And the actual his consumption of alcohol is actually reduced significantly. Whereas, it was 1 to 2 glasses every night, for days on end. So there is, like, from first-hand account, I've seen with my clients how a reduction in alcohol changes their whole perspective on training, life, and everything. So from that sense, that was quite cool to see. I haven't had a client like that in the past.
And how did you guys get to the point where the kind of improvements that awaited that client, how did you get him to action that? Because it's very common for people to know exactly know all the facts about alcohol being harmful, but we do it anyway, and people continue to drink probably more than they should be, regardless of whether or not they're aware of it being good or bad. I think it's pretty well known that it is harmful, but the habit continues. So how did you guys get to the point where that client was ready to actually take that step, and how did they start? How did you guys work together to actually just get the ball rolling on that?
So this is an interesting point because we spoke about that one a lot. It was mainly for him, it was the action of, it's been a long day at work, I want to come home, we have dinner, and then we have a glass of wine. It's just like a ritual, like a habit, like not necessarily needing it, but like, it's always nice to have a glass of wine when you're making dinner and then while you're having dinner. And that's just like a rule of thumb for him. That was just how he did things. And for us, and for me explaining it to him, I was understanding and trying to come accustomed to changing that habit. So like, for example, if he drinks a lot of water, so if he drinks a lot of water during the day, he doesn't want to drink more water at night. He wants to like have something different, to feel like there's a change. It's all about change. So like you work your 8 hours and, it's quite monotonous. Then when you come home, you want to have something that can wind you down. Even though alcohol doesn't actually do that. So it was replacing the glass of wine at dinner with like a Coke Zero, for example. So it was having the habit of going for something different to drink that tastes nice, makes you feel good with Coke Zero as the beginning, and that actually really helped to like instead of reaching for the bottle of wine, reach for the bottle of Coke Zero, a couple glasses of Coke Zero at dinner, and then after that, when that started, he became like accustomed to that, and then the thought of going for the alcohol actually was not there anymore. Then then the understanding came, and it was like, okay, I don't actually need this alcohol. It's not actually doing me any good. It was just the habit of tastes nice, and I feel like this after work. So instilling that substitute to expose the underlying kind of like problem was what came out of it, and then the reflection started, which was actually the best part. This is what I'm doing now, and this I feel so much better. And now reflecting on it, I'm less puffy. I perform better in our training sessions. I feel better at work. I feel better cognitively. Like can do better in my relationship. So all these other aspects falling into place then came to fruition.
I think
That'll
also
answer your question.
I think also once you get the client or the person or the friend or whatever to the point where they can see, they have the proof that removing the alcohol for at least a week, they can now start to actually feel the difference of what it feels like in their body to not have that substance there. It's kind of like eating good food versus eating shit food.
Yeah.
Like if you're always eating food that is rubbish, it's highly processed, it's filled with, it's very sugary or whatever, and you're eating that all the time, you become very accustomed to how it feels. But then when you remove it and you replace it with more whole foods, and you start to feel after a few days, oh wow, I'm actually like, I feel a little bit more, mentally sharp, and I feel like my energy is more constant, and then they feel what they've been missing out on. It becomes easier for them to implement healthier eating habits because they're aware of the upside.
Exactly, and it's easy to see. Okay, this substance isn't good for me. It's not doing me any good. But that's not always the easiest. It's not like, okay, now I must just stop. Like people, you can't just do that. Like you need to feel what it's like to then stop that for a couple of weeks, like you said, and then reflect on what change has happened to then actually understand what you need to do to not feel like that.
I think a big one as well is the social inertia, where if you're in an environment where drinking is very normal, like I know most of my social spaces, I'd say probably 50% of them are, no, maybe 70% of them are alcohol free, and then 30% of them are not, which I'm very happy with, because it's, when there was a time where it was like 90-10 to alcohol. Like 90% of my social interactions involved alcohol, and 10% didn't. But, that social element of the first, 20 no's are very difficult. So it's like you're going into the space where everyone is drinking except maybe you. Like literally you're the only one not drinking, or maybe one other person. Saying no initially, there's that whole peer pressure element attached to it. But if you're regularly going into that environment and you're saying no, then you arrive in the environment and now there's a Heineken Zero in the fridge for me.
Yeah.
They know.
And people think that there's something wrong with you when
Yeah,
you
it's
say,
weird, man.
I'm not going to drink. It's like, oh my God, do you have like flu? Have you been in hospital?
Well, they
Or,
think
like,
you're like
it's
training
is
for
there something
something
wrong
like
with you?
crazy.
Yeah, it's like, is it like, do you need help? Like,
Yeah.
why don't you? That's what people think. I swear, I've been in interactions where I've seen like a friend that like had chosen not to drink for like a month or whatever, and then be in an environment where there's like alcohol in front and everyone's pouring drinks and whatnot, and then like someone would come and ask him, where's your drink? And he's like, no, I'm just trying to like, I'm not trying to drink for this month. It's like, are you okay? Like,
Yeah.
you're feeling unwell. Like, what do you mean you don't want anything to drink?
It's such
and
a-
like you can actually see in the person's face, it's like there's so much confusion, and
Yeah.
that's also the scary part about
No,
the
it is.
normalization of drinking culture. Is
But,
that it's
yeah.
like it is like this. There's this automatic response from the person offering that like there has to be something wrong with you if you're not like drinking anything.
It makes a lot of sense though, because on this podcast that we shared on the group, Huberman cited a statistic where 80% or over 80% of people in the world who are above the legal drinking age in their respective countries drink alcohol. So the vast majority of people drink alcohol. It's like it's you're in a small minority if you don't drink booze. So like if you mention that, it's the same thing as saying something like, "Oh, I ran a marathon last weekend." It's like, you ran a marathon, like what? That's amazing, or like wow, like why did you do that? Like what led you to do? People are going to ask questions. Like
Yeah.
if you're not drinking alcohol,
No,
people are going to be
true.
like, why are you not drinking alcohol? What? It's like that's why it also baffles me because alcohol is just a drug. Like that's why I often say do alcohol or be on alcohol because for me in my head it's the exact same thing as any other sort of drug. So imagine now like the weirdness is kind of like if you say to someone I don't do tuk, they're not gonna go what the fuck, bro? Why didn't you do tuk, man? Like why aren't you doing tuk tonight, baby? Like what happened
Yeah,
to the tuk?
exactly.
Like it's like no, it's like and it is the same.
Yeah.
Like it's like if everyone did tuk, that's how we would respond.
It's
It's like you'd be like, "Is everything okay, bro? Why aren't
And
you
I mean,
taking your?"
Gideon
too
and I,
normalized, too accessible.
yeah, Gideon and I were having a conversation about this earlier.
I was going to ask you now about
And I was saying like it's weird how well we had a conversation a few weeks back, and I just brought it up and I said like it's weird how people underestimate the power of a drink or even a sip, like just what it can do to your body and like all the effects it has. So people like think like, oh, I just had a beer and it was a social thing, it was nothing, but like there's so many things that follow with that. Like it affects your nervous system, it affects your judgment, it affects all these kind of things that your body should involuntarily be able to do, like proper circulation or healing you when you have an injury or when you're sick, and reduce inflammation. But it's like people will be in training blocks or people will be like leading a busy week or busy lifestyle, but they'll drink. And I'm like, don't you see how that's counteracting whatever you're trying to work towards? Like if you have a busy week, you should be putting things in your body that's going to help you cope with that and even like make you better. Because if you have a busy week, I'm a firm believer that that week shouldn't, like, you shouldn't have like 4 busy weeks in a row. Like by the first or second week, you should be looking at something and being like, it's either my sleep, it's either my diet, or I'm either like taking in something wrong or something's wrong with me. Like you shouldn't be continuously going through the cycle, you know? And very rarely do people look at alcohol and say like, that is the problem. Or the other conversation that Kid and I were having is like, how many people do you come across that will openly say like, oh, I'm addicted to alcohol? That's not a conversation that will normally happen, but it will happen with like drugs, it will happen with other addictive aspects or channels. But alcohol is something that like is so protected in society, and I don't understand why. Like, if you see someone or if you talk to someone or you engage with someone that's having alcohol on a daily basis, like that is not healthy, and they should be getting assistance if they can't stop that action. You know, like if they can't stop that routine, because if it continues going, it's having a continuous effect on their health. But they won't openly say like, "Oh, that's my thing," you know.
I wanted
think-
to. Sorry,
Yeah, no, go
I,
for
I
it.
wanted to ask. I wanted to ask both of you what you thought about if it's possible for a person to, you know, engage with alcohol on a level that's manageable. Can someone have alcohol on a level that is obviously no alcohol is better than some alcohol, right? But
Sure.
is it possible to live a lifestyle where alcohol is included in your life?
Will you
And
please,
how would that look?
Seb can answer that
will you
first.
please repeat the question?
I'm basically saying, can one include alcohol in their life and it be on a manageable level? Like, can you live and lead a life with alcohol in it? And how would that look?
Me personally,
I'm asking as a question.
Like,
If
or-
you say you can use yourself as an example, or you
Yeah.
can use someone or an individual or a scenario.
and what do we mean by manageable level?
So where it's to the point where I mean, I'm taking out that you can't like no binge drinking, no drinking on a regular basis, but that you can still engage with alcohol. And so what I'm saying is that you can have either zero alcohol or you can have some alcohol in settings that you choose to have. Is that can that be manageable in your life?
Yes, personally, I do think it is now, but it's definitely taken me time to get to this point because the introduction of alcohol into my life was never a thing of let me just appreciate this this kind of culturally significant little treat. You know, it was always like, how much of this can I consume so that I just feel absolutely shit-faced. Like, that's how alcohol was introduced into my life. Specifically, like, in my family environment, like with my mom, she never drank in front of me. Alcohol was very much like it was tucked away. Like, I can vividly remember the first time I saw my mom drinking alcohol, and it was like, oh my gosh. But little did I know, she had always been drinking. It just, well, not always been drinking, but it wasn't a new thing. It was like, when she drank with her friends, she did it out of, like, away from me. And I think that, like, kind of made like an association in my head of like, okay, like, it's a bad thing, it's not good. And in my, like, high school environment, it was always the thing of like, you know, it was binge drinking. So that introduction was like very excessive. Same was with varsity. And I almost kind of had like like how I am with most things, like an all or nothing approach to it. However, now it's very different for me, where it's like I definitely am. I actually far prefer, as I'm sure most people do, to just enjoy the thing in a moderate amount. I have to really want to have it though, because like I said, for me, there's a big downside, which is I feel anxious, and I don't like that feeling. Like, it's not a nice feeling for me. So yes, I can definitely have it in my life in a manageable amount. But to be honest, like, I would rather just not have it at all.
And the reason why I ask is because I do get a lot of questions on person A that was drinking, multiple times in the week and then on the weekend, and then, wants to cut it out, but then still wants to have alcohol at the occasional social event. So, like, for every 5 social events, they would want to drink at 1, maybe 2 of them. So building towards that relationship with alcohol, then it's not like I'm going to have a drink every time I'm around my friends. But as you said, I'm going to have that drink when I really, really feel like it. And I know what the downsides could be. So having a full understanding of what to expect from having it. You know what I'm saying? Like building that relationship with it. Because that's what I explain to my clients, is that you just need to be fully aware. And being aware is like the next step closer to fully understanding how you interact with it.
Yeah. You definitely can build that sort of moderated relationship with it. And I also think, in terms of like the cultural impact of your relationship with alcohol, you actually get more upside from drinking if you abstain from it for a long period of time from your friends and family. Like, if you don't drink a lot, but your friends and family do, and then you drink with them, they lose their shit. They're like, oh my gosh, yay, like, you're having a beer, like, and then they love it. As opposed to if you do it every single time, it's like very normal. And it's like, it's
The reason why it was also important is because I had spoken to also a few of my friends about it. And there's the culture around using alcohol abusively, like in social settings, because, this is just me, I've people that can potentially struggle socially can use alcohol as a vice to help in social settings, right? That's why it's so, like, accessible and, seen as the norm, because, it just makes you feel a little bit lighter. I mean, we can all attest to that. So I think building that relationship with it, that you don't need it in order to interact with other people, or you don't need it to, like, have a good time at a social event. Like, you can go to the rugby and not drink. Even though it's normalized to go to the rugby and you must drink.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So if you don't drink for 5, 6 social events and then you go watch the rugby, then fuck yeah, it's nice. Then you can go and have a drink with your mates while you're watching the rugby. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
It's building that relationship with it, that you feel that it doesn't own you. Because I see it a lot where the alcohol owns the people. It's like, I have to have it. Otherwise, I might as well not even be here.
And the thing is also, like,
unhealthy.
People, like, for a lot of people, I think the ritual element of it is very important. Like, especially, at least for me, like what I've seen with the older generations, like a husband and wife sitting down at the end of the day and having like a glass of wine together, like, they love bonding over that. And I think there is huge value in that. Yes, there are a lot healthier alternatives. But again, then you can actually take a philosophical slant on it as opposed to a biological slant on it and go, what does a healthy lifestyle mean? How do you
Completely.
factor in like culture, relationships, emotion, and like what that little nightly ritual with your spouse or partner means to you? Because yes, okay, maybe it's not the healthiest thing in the world to have a glass of wine every night. However, that time of like sitting, being present, sharing a drink with your spouse, maybe there's disproportionate emotional upside for you and for your relationship, and that in a way outweighs
But
other
like through
elements.
sharing that drink.
100%.
Yeah.
And also
Okay,
the
fair.
the
For some people. For me personally, not necessarily, but there could be scenarios where that is a very significant little ritual that they have.
and it's about the stages in which you are in your life. Like if your goal is to, is to look like a certain way. If you have goals in which you lose weight and you're trying to get in shape and you're trying to get fitter, stronger, etc., and that's your main goal at the time, alcohol is going to be working against you. Like then you need to prioritize what your goals are, and that always gets misconstrued. It's always like, oh, but I can fit it in. Like I can. But like, no, not if that's your main goal. But I understand what you're saying, and I am for that opinion. I'm just it becomes an issue where it's like I want both, but like
Yeah.
you can't have both.
That's
like
the
it's
have your cake and eat it too.
exactly.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
you have to understand that it's, as Matt and I were speaking, is that it's always going to work against you. And as Matt listed all the negative aspects of it, and especially while training consistently and wanting to reach your goals, it's constantly pulling you back.
I think to add to that, like I to answer your question that you
The
kind of
moderate
like
one.
asked us, the moderation. At
Yeah.
this stage of my life now, I am definitely like fully against it.
Yeah.
I've always had the thought process of like I probably shouldn't do it more than I should. But like it takes a while for you to piece why you want that to be a thing, because your substance behind making a decision is so important, and that obviously holds you up to a standard. And I think the biggest thing for me was I remember I got my driver's license and I started driving around and stuff. And the first thing that I thought about when I got my driver's was I don't want to be under the influence, so that if I have to go anywhere in an emergency, I'll always be available for anyone that's close to me. And there's been times where I've gone to events where I haven't driven and then I would take a beer. And that would be like my occasional one, because that would be very rare that I'm not driving somewhere, right? And now, like recently at this stage of my life, like the more that I look at it and the more that I look at things that are not beneficial to us, the more I want to kind of take it out of my life and like in the people around me. And it's almost like I follow this for myself. I'm not going to force it on anyone else, but I will list the things that it's holding you back from. Because in some cases, I think it can hold you back from a lot of meaningful development that's ideal to us as like human beings, and also within our communities, and also maximizing our potential as people and within our career fields, within our interests, within our relationships. There's so many things that might seem hard to do, and I feel like sometimes certain people use either alcohol and other substances or different kind of actions or hobbies to kind of subside away from that, just to kind of like, let's just do the easier thing for now. I know that I have to deal with this, but let's do the easier thing for now, because I don't want to deal with that now. I'll deal with it later. And I think that there's so much reward in dealing with things that are troubling you, like, and understanding what that means for you as a person, because that trauma will always be there. So whether you deal with it now, it's gonna come out like in 10 or 15 or 20 years time. And I don't wish this on anyone, but I'm just saying from personal experience what I felt, you know, like when you hold on. And I think it does relate a bit to like when trauma happened in my life. Like it's like when you don't do something or you stay away from certain things that you always said that you wouldn't do, or certain actions that you said you wouldn't like act on, then you go through a traumatic experience and you're like, oh, fuck it, I might as well just do it now. Like, I might as well just explore that, because I'm trying to navigate through this like traumatic experience where I've been like lost. And then you actually get a full like understanding of how it's not beneficial as opposed to before. So it's like looking through a different lens, getting an opportunity to look through something and then step back from it. So I personally think, in my opinion, I don't think that it's beneficial, and I don't think that I personally would live in moderation with it, just because of like, there's been moments now recently, especially before my training block of doing the marathon, where I've had a beer, take a sip, and it immediately just hits my head, and I'm like, yeah, this is not gonna help me at all, and not even for now. It's not even gonna, like, not that it's not gonna benefit my training, but it's not gonna benefit my belief into what I want to become.
Sure, it's
You
not.
know what I
It
mean?
doesn't like affirm
Doesn't align.
the sort of like person you
And
want to
there's
make.
at,
You want to
at
be.
this point, there's no justification that I have for it. So
And
I think it's just so interesting. And I just wanted to share that because I think it's also such a like a refreshing thing to share, because we're not. It's not like we can talk about this often. You know what I mean? Like if you go to a social setting and you be like, let's talk about like fully stopping drinking alcohol. Some people will be like, oh, I'm in for that. And then at a certain point, they'll be like, okay, like let's catch up on this conversation later. We're here to have some fun and stuff. And then other people will be like, no, I think that's unrealistic. I think you have to have moderation, you know. But I think there needs
Oh,
to be
is that?
opportunity for everything.
Maybe I misunderstood the question. Then are you saying would I rather live with?
no,
No, he
no,
was.
no. I was the basically the question was, can you have it in your life where you have a relationship with it? Because this isn't a relationship where it can be like used. I like, for use of a better word, sustainably. You know, not using it abusively and using it like and understanding the full implications of it. Because it's easy to just do something with not fully understanding.
Sure.
And all of us being, in the fitness and health industry, I mean, I know the effects of it extensively. So,
Yeah.
I know, like, I can see right through if someone tells me otherwise. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like when people try to justify, I'm like, I basically check out because I know what's happening.
Sure.
So that's my question was that I very rarely will find someone that has that interaction that I had with my client, and took like 2-3 months for him to understand the level of which I needed him to, so he could understand where he needed to go and what was holding. So he knew it was holding him back, but how does he change it, and how does that make him feel?
Sure.
And how does that affect everything that we do here? Because I think again, just to reiterate, is that people don't really understand how it affects you. Like it causes other things and snowball effect, like using alcohol and then having to use other substances to counteract it, like alcohol into caffeine, and then caffeine into nicotine, and then
Yeah.
so on and so
I think
forth.
I
But this is another rabbit hole. But I'm just
Yeah.
saying, this is the research that I've done, and this is what the data says. This is how it like.
it's the ultimate gateway drug.
Well, yeah, it's like it's used as a way to bring yourself down, like it's a suppressive, and then you use you're drinking a lot the one night, and then you've got a deadline the next day, and then you need to regain that energy, but you feel like shit, so you just throw back some caffeine and have a bit of nicotine, and then you right back in, and then you wire it, and then then the cycle kind of
Yeah.
repeats.
You know-
That's an extreme example,
Yeah,
but
to add to your point, that's such a that word stays with me because it makes you think like alcohol is a suppressive, so it brings you down, and it allows you to kind of settle so that you could kind of, I don't know. Some people will like have a super stressful day, and I've been close to people that do this, so I've seen these cases in some circumstances, but stressful day, like you said, and then have a glass of wine or have a beer and then let's solve the problem. But if you think about it, like alcohol suppresses you, but it doesn't allow you to progress. 'Cause
No.
every time you're taking a sip, your nervous system is that you're like, okay, let's take another step back. So then how do you even solve the problem?
Sure, you're
then
not
you
solving
get
it.
then you get to solve the problem and you're completely unable to. Because imagine you in a situation now where you had a drink or two drinks, something goes down, you want to respond within time. And I've been in this situation before. You want to respond within time, but you actually realize that in real life, you're moving so slow. But in your mind, you're like, oh my gosh, I know exactly what to do. I need to do this, do this, do this. But yeah, you like in real life, you're like struggling with like a plaster, or like you're struggling to like get something together. You drop something which you wouldn't normally do. And I think that personally stays with me. And I always think like when I think of doing something or when I want to do it, I want to be able to do it without any like
Yes.
thing that touches onto it. But I think that's such an interesting way to think of it. Like, it suppresses you, but does it allow you to progress, like, with solving the problem that you initially picked up the bottle to help you solve?
Yeah, I think that's probably I've done a lot of personal work to become more tolerant of society's view of alcohol.
amazing.
Because, you know, I I don't want to be annoyed at my friends, and I also don't want to change my friends, to be honest, around certain things to do with alcohol. But I had like a lot of heated conversations with my mom where I'd be like, "Do you know how like stupid you guys kind of look, where you are kind of you're admonishing this like these other drugs, but like alcohol is fine." Like it makes no fucking sense. Like it's so stupid. Like there are people who will be like, don't do mushrooms or don't smoke weed or don't do heroin, and it's like whilst sipping their beer.
Yeah.
And it's like you're an idiot.
Yeah.
Like you're literally doing. You could be standing in front of me with a fucking like thing wrapped around your arm, shooting heroin into your forearm. It's the same thing. Like I think that cognitive dissonance is what stresses me out the most, where it's like there's such like low awareness of what you're, like you're saying, like what you're actually doing.
The abusiveness is what it really drives like my like the abusiveness is just crazy because
Yeah.
it's simply the fact that I need to get absolutely fucked up. I will drink anything and anywhere. And obviously, as Matt says, it comes with other complications down the line, you know, like, fuck, God forbid, you drinking and then you land up behind the wheel and then you kill yourself and millions of, like, you know, a few other people in the car, whatever. But the biggest thing is the abusiveness, and it's so easy to fall into it. You know, it's like, I have 1 or 2 drinks and then it's 6 drinks, then it's 10 drinks, you know? And that's happening on a multiple different, you know, multiple different times. So I think the understanding of how that affects you is, basically that's in a nutshell.
I don't for me it's personally not like a problem with that people abuse alcohol, because at the end of the day, like, that's a sickness. Like, you're sick if you're doing that. You've got you're addicted. But it's the thing of like the like blindness around that being the same, or like some false moral high ground around that towards other drugs, where I'm like, but you must understand it. And it's funny, but it bless you,
Bless you, man.
that it is, and we must understand, like, when you going for like having a drink or something, it must have the same amount of consideration of like, you're gonna go do a line of cocaine now, like that. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
It's not different, because you're altering your state of mind, you're damaging your organs, you're damaging your brain, you're poisoning yourself, like you're fucking your body up. Like you don't like go
Back to my point on the awareness. I think the biggest part about understanding it is being self-aware, and I can guarantee you, not even 1 in 10 people are aware of that. Is they're not actually aware of what's happening.
Yeah.
And that's a huge problem.
Yeah.
That's a huge problem.
And it's also, I don't know, it's also weird, the I know we've touched on it already, but like the pressure element around it. I know that's definitely gotten, maybe it's because I'm in like slightly different circles, or people have like matured more, but in my experience, that's definitely become less. Like people, or I'm just used to saying no.
I was also going to say that, like, I think you've really closed and narrowed down your friendship circle and included people that you really want to be around, and you maybe choose not to be around those people that, you know, necessarily would engage in those habits. Maybe you've actually, without even realizing, distanced yourself, like, from those kind of interactions. You know that's what would go down. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
Yeah.
Like, subconsciously.
I think also it's a lot about like boundary setting.
Yeah, exactly.
So you even could have the same mates, but now it's very clear that, you know, it's more times than not you're going to say no, so they probably just shouldn't offer anyway.
And you don't engage with, and if you, I mean, you still mates with them, but you don't engage with them on the same level, like, for example, how you used to. Maybe, you know, you see them on occasions that aren't the same as they were 5 years ago. You know, you've changed your perspective and your outlook on how you interact with that. I know that's for me what I've done.
Yeah. No, I think it's quite interesting. I
Yeah.
think like just navigating that process is once again like something where you can't put it on someone, because most times like some people are uneducated, so they don't actually understand that. Like it could be a thing where it's just been passed to them from like generation to generation. They could have been brought up in an environment where it's been normalized. Um, yeah, that statistic is quite hectic within our country as well as like other different countries. But I think that at the end of the day, when you have the opportunity to make someone aware of like the benefits that they could get without it, I think that there's so much value in that, because it's not about essentially, it's the same with like health and wellness. It's not about getting them to drop everything they're doing and just go and do push-ups and squats and everything, but it's getting them to understand that doing those things can play a very beneficial role in your life, and it can help you do everything that you've been wanting to do, and it could possibly open those doors. Because when I say it could, like nothing guarantees anything. Any action that all of us do, it doesn't guarantee that we will be successful at it, but it will take you closer for sure. So I think it's just about like whatever you believe in, and if you believe in whether it's no alcohol, or whether you believe in finding a balance, or whether you believe in like having alcohol for a certain amount of time, going off it, going back on it, like it's just about sharing that knowledge with other people, because it's like taking step by step. If you think about all the years that society and people have been going through just doing it without any thought process or without any kind of like understanding of it, any progress that we can make within this space is better than nothing. And that's why I think going into the topic of like zero alcohol drinks, when I saw that, I lost my mind. Like it was unbelievable. And even at some of the restaurants, when I asked for it, they were like, "What are you talking about?" And like, I think it's just so cool.
I think it's amazing, yeah.
Pushes a totally different narrative in conversations now.
Because I do still think there's huge. Like I said at the one stage, I really do think that there is, as much as it is, it isn't biologically healthy for you. For millennia, there've been substances of some other kind, whether it be alcohol or like some sort of root or plant or whatever, that different societies throughout the different kind of epochs have played around with and used in a ceremonial kind of cultural setting, like taking communion if you're, I don't know, Anglican or something, and there is value within that. It's like, let's do this thing together. And I think if you are making the conscious decision to now abstain from alcohol, but you still want to be a part of that ritual, it's amazing to have something that the rest of the sort of tribe doesn't then go, oh, this person is like a black sheep. They're not, they're not sort of buying into this like social contract we have, that when we're at a certain gathering, this is what we do. And like, yes, it's fine to just do your own thing and not. I very much buy into that. But I also think sometimes it is nice to like smooth that cultural inertia a little bit by having a non-alcoholic alternative. Like having like a Heineken Zero or that Corona Zero thing, where it really like removes that element from it. Where now, because for some reason also the people around you can sometimes feel weird if you don't drink, which is quite strange. Where I think and like if you are trying to, I suppose, I don't know if fit in is the right word, but you're wanting to just like smooth that social interaction.
You want to avoid that conflict
Yeah, it's
or
like
that
just leave it. Like
friction.
it's a very good solution to that. It's like, I don't want to drink alcohol, but at the same time, I also want to participate in this social setting without having to interact with the whole thing of like, oh, where's your drink? Where's your drink? So you have a non-alcoholic one, and it's like it's happy days.
To be honest, it's also nice to just give explanations for the whole night. I love doing that. At some point, I used to like when I would go out, for example, and I'd be the only one at the table with a Americano. And everyone would ask, and I'd just be like, this is my reason, and this is why. Because I think there's also so much, but there's also time and place. You need to know who you can do that with, and who you can't do that with. Which comes back to my initial thing. It's like, just know where you can bring it forward and where you can't. Because there's a good time for everything. And sometimes people won't take that value when they need to in that space, as opposed to in a different setting. And that's a cool
It
thing.
would be an interesting experiment to go into one of those settings. It would be
With the podcast
and
equipment.
with the podcast setup, to go into one of those
I think it would be
settings
amazing.
and just be like, not with the podcast setup, but just to go and ask someone, excuse me, why are you drinking that glass of wine? And they'd be like, what are you talking about? Like, no, but like, why are you drinking alcohol? Like, what's the? And I'd be very interested to see what the sort of response would be like.
You know, it's so interesting. I feel like there would need to be like a whole formal setup and like a reason and a permit and stuff. Because like I feel like some people would just get so like offended by that. They'll just be
Personally, I
like,
would-
why are you asking me in my downtime while I'm doing this?
People are going to think it's
that's
a
what
skit.
It is, you know what I
It's an
mean?
attack. I would personally say because I want to,
Yeah.
because it's nice.
and then you'll you'll actually get someone with like a historic reason. They'll be like, oh well, back in 1841 they used this for,
Yes.
and then you'll be like, okay.
That is actually quite an interesting
Yeah.
point, though. I think before water was actually safe, we used to drink a lot more alcohol as a society because it was
Still.
de-germed, distilled, exactly. But
Yes.
we're gonna wrap it up. I think we could talk for hours about this, but thanks for listening. If you've got any alcohol-related questions, hit me up. I know very little, but I'm happy to try and answer some cues. But we'll catch you in the next episode. And if you are doing Sober October, keep going. Last push, you're almost there. If you're listening to this after Sober October and you did participate, congrats. If you didn't participate, try it next year. I did it the first time in 2019, I remember, in Stellenbosch University, a town infamous for its drinking habits. And that was an awesome kind of detox. And I've done it pretty much every year since then. And I think it's a great mindfulness practice, and it'll really kind of connect you to how much you do actually probably rely on alcohol, which I think is not a bad thing at all. So give that a go, and we will catch you in the next episode.
Boom.
Thank you so much for listening to the show, guys. We love answering specific questions. So if there's anything you want to know, leave a comment or reach out to us directly at HorizonZA on Instagram, or email us at movement@horizongym.com. Until next time, I'm your host, Seb Prentice, and this is Beyond Physical.